What's a sound you heard when you were young that you no longer hear? There have been children playing outside the past week in my neighborhood. Like running around, chasing each other, laughing, and generally being completely unaware of just how loud they are. It's really awesome. We lived right next to a huge field and across the road from Lake Michigan, so on a summer night there would be a million crickets singing, and I could smell the lake through the open window right by my bed. Such a peaceful place, just thinking about it gives me the feels. I live on Lake Michigan. They're still here. So is the scent. When I was little, on the weekends in the morning when things were quiet, I could hear the horses from the ranch in the hills above us neighing. Now the horses are gone, replaced by McMansions, and local traffic is so bad you wouldn't be able to hear them anyway. Reminds me of a poem we had to learn in high school. Buffalo Dusk by Carl Sandburg. The buffaloes are gone. And those who saw the buffaloes are gone. Those who saw the buffaloes by thousands and how they pawed the prairie sod into dust with their hoofs, their great heads down pawing on in a great pageant of dusk. Those who saw the buffaloes are gone. And the buffaloes are gone. Edit. I'm blown away by how much this poem has affected so many of you. My whole CL was forced to memorize it and perform it in front of the CL one by one. I have fond memories of sitting around with my friends and memorizing it together, testing each other. So the poem makes me nostalgic on a couple of levels. I had an older neighbor who would clang on pots and pans every New Year's. He did this until he was bedridden. I've never heard any other person strike quite the same level of gusto in beating cast iron with a meat tenderizer. Rest in peace, Terry. The sound of Vietnam War-era Hueys. The local air base was used for helo training when I was a kid, and the sound of those old two-blade rotors is like nothing else. https://n.wikipediaorg/wiki/bell_Iroquois_variants #u.h. 1h. As I was falling asleep as a kid, sometimes I would hear full concerts in my brain. Music that I had never heard before. Almost like my brain was making the music for me and I was just listening. I always felt amazing, like it was the best song I've ever heard. It went away as I got older, haven't heard it in such a long time. Footsteps and doors creaking open, it's not a good memory. I have PTSD. Sometimes I think I can hear it at night but there's no one there. I'm not as scared as I was because I have my wife here and she would fight anyone before they got to me. The daily arrival and departure of a steam locomotive. Yes, I'm that old, but it was the most satisfying, powerful, unforgettable sound for a little kid. They were like huge living, breathing beasts. Steam engines have always been this magical, mythical thing for me. They were phased out long before I was born and were consigned to museums even when I was a child, so seeing one in action is always amazing to me and hasn't lost any value. As a kid of the 80s I grew up in peak Thomas the Tank Engine times, and was obsessed with trains. Going to places like Crew when they did their Thomas exhibition with all the exact train models from the show, as a 5-year-old that was like going to Disney World. You're right, they're like big mechanical creatures. They were amazing as a kid, but as an adult I find them even more impressive feats of engineering. The UK has some amazingly well-preserved old-school train lines and steam engines. The high-frequency sound that fluorescent ballast makes. Yep. High-frequency dead because I'm old. Also can't hear a 400 Hz because 125 decibels radar cooling fan next to the workbench for a couple of weeks. Boss walks into the lab, oh my god, how can you stand that noise? Two 20-something engineers look at each other. What noise? Boss goes pale, says never mind, walks out. We got out the decibel meter and both said fuck. 4 Radar 3350 engines on the Lockheed Super Constellation being test run at Miami International Airport late into the evening while turning my pillow to the cool side on a sultry summer's evening. The frogs ribbiting at night, down by the nearby pond, outside my window right by my bed. I miss it so much. They just aren't there anymore. Also, I don't live at my parents' anymore. My nephew sleeps in that bed when he stays over and says he's never heard the frogs. That was such an amazing ASMR to fall asleep to on summer nights. Big part of my childhood. The gas station across from my childhood house used to ding when someone got gas. I have such a vivid memory of being a little girl and laying in my mom's room with the windows open, and it's a beautiful summer day with the wind blowing in and spreading out on her cool bedsheets. Her bedsheets were this specific kind of silky smooth that felt so refreshing to lay on. It's such an insignificant thing, but I remember feeling true relaxation in those moments. That super loud quiet at 2 a.m. when you're half asleep in the middle row of the van, and dad stopped for gas somewhere in Pennsylvania. Sister and brother are asleep in the back, mom's got her head tilted back but you know she's awake. The dinging of the door opening with the keys still in wakes everyone halfway. Mom asks quietly if anyone needs to use the bathroom. Nobody answers. Now if I stop for gas on the thruway at 2 a.m., I'm the one driving. That loud quiet is definitely gone. This one struck a good chord with me. I had similar experience. I also remember kind of vaguely watching my mom turning to look at us and whisper quietly to my dad. Multiple large groups of children playing outside. Grew up with 3 baseball fields, 2 tennis courts, and a creek from 30 feet to 100 yards from the end of my driveway. Pickup games or organized games year-round on the fields, tennis, skateboarding, or kickball on the courts, and fishing and camping out with your buddies on the creek bank. Looking back I feel like I grew up in paradise. Someone mowing their backyard and then a big bang when they mower hit a big pile of white dog excrement. That is because the chemicals that turned the feces white and petrified them, have been removed. I didn't know this was a thing. I remember white dog s. The knife sharpener who used to push his cart around my grandmother's neighborhood. The cart had a peg on the wheel that hit a bell every revolution, they were big wheels. And every so often he'd hit a gong. My cousin Alan's voice, his whistling, laughing, speaking, I miss it, I don't hear it anymore and I will never hear it ever again. I miss him even though I didn't know the guy that much. He's dead now. A ringing telephone, and I mean a real bell with a real clapper, not some digital version. A TV being changed by the dial while mom shouts from the other room change them one at a time or you'll wear it out. Radio static between channels. The buzz of a tube radio warming up, dime/quarter dropping into a payphone, and that second sound of it falling again after you hang up. The whistle of the paperboys on weekend mornings, coming down the street dragging their trolleys with newspapers for sale. They would do 2 long weep-weep blows on their whistle, and slowly walk down each street in my area. You'd see people nip out in their pajamas, all bleary-eyed and messy-haired, to grab a Sydney Morning Herald or Sun paper. This was in the inner west of Sydney in the early 80s. A chorus of annual cicadas and trains in the distance at night. I grew up in a medium-sized town in the southeast US and that's what every summer night sounded like. Now I live in a bigger city in a more northern state and it's just cars and city noise at night. I miss it, it was the best white noise to sleep to. Having moved to one of those smaller towns for school, I absolutely love it. Most people get annoyed by the cicadas, but it's one of those small things I look forward to every late spring summer. Gonna miss it when I'm gone.